something for your mind. Did I introduce you to them? To Superorganism? Or do you know Superorganism?
I'm not familiar with Super.
Well, remind me to show you that later.
Are they obscure?
Somewhat, but they're kind of emerging, so they might not be.
Then what are you doing
Obscure.
talking about them right now?
I'm really sorry, okay? Sometimes
We talked about this, Ben.
non-obscure things emerge in my mind. This show is a show
Called Obscuridity.
about obscure things.
And there are two people that host it.
Uh-huh.
Normally, it's Ben and Thomas, but this week,
It's Thomas and Ben.
it's Thomas and Ben.
Right.
I'm subbing in for Thomas normally. He's here, but I'm going to be here instead,
Right.
speaking on his behalf.
This is Ben playing the role of Thomas and
So-
starring Thomas as Ben.
So
Who's who?
on this show, we kind of pick topics that are, I'm not sure what the word for it is, but like
Obscure.
little known, not well known.
Obscure is the word that you're looking for.
Is it though? It's like, because it's kind of like, it's hard to describe. Ben's shutting off the refrigerator so that it doesn't make too much noise. Here on this show, Obscurigami. Obscure? That's where the title Obscurigami comes
Good
from.
lord.
Oh my.
What are we getting into
Wow.
here? This is a hot mess.
I can't believe I'm just now realizing that. Yeah, sure. All right, so what do we got going
So
on?
this
What do you have
week-
to talk about?
We have something unique. There is a book known as the Voynich Manuscript 408.
Okay.
It is housed in the Yale University Library, the Voynich Library at Yale University.
This book is called the Voynich
Manuscript
Manuscript,
number 408.
number 408.
And it has a lot of other designations
Mm-hmm.
and titles. The best known one being the Voynitch Manuscript.
The Voynich Manuscript.
Voynitch. Voynich.
Not voyage. Voynich.
Voynitch.
Voynich.
Like, you got an itch
Yeah.
and you scratch it, but there's no T. It's just Voynich.
Number 408.
What was the episode
408.
that we just like could not take seriously at all? Do you remember that? It was like the second one. It was a similar situation to this where we were doing
did
two,
one.
and
I don't
then
remember
it
what
just
that was.
totally went off the rails, and
I have no idea.
we hardly finished it.
I don't even remember what our.
I think it was like around gas turbine era.
Oh, it might have been
But gas turbine
gas turbine wasn't the one though.
wasn't
I
the
don't
one.
think.
It was around that time. Though.
Did salvage one Kinzaza? Wasn't that cockroach milk? Okay, soda. Familia, fatal familia, insomnia. Benjamin
It might have
Yapstones.
been.
Gregor
No.
McGregor. That's too early.
Yeah,
It might have been like FFI or
it might have been FFI. Yeah.
cockroach milk. Cockroach milk was notorious, but that was just because of the topic.
Yeah, it's weird to me because I feel like that actually was an interesting topic, but
Yeah,
there
I
just
think
wasn't
so too.
enough material. I feel like there was something else we should have said at the beginning.
Well, what do we usually talk about?
I don't know. We
We
banter.
say the banter. That's what we miss.
Come
We
on,
just
give me some banter.
we have to throw in some banter. So, how's the weather? Did you
The weather looks good.
get stuck in the floods recently?
I didn't get flooded.
Did you see all the fake news?
I saw a lot of fake news. A lot of people contacted me, inquiring as to whether or not I was below 17 feet of water.
For those listeners who might not be acquainted with the area in which Ben and I live, there was a lot of rain. We got a lot of rain in the area, like
pretty short
6 inches in
period of
like
time.
24 hours or something like that. A lot. And there was some flooding, but somehow and there was a particular lake kind of in the middle of Lynchburg City that the dam was kind of weakened. It was overflowing. They thought it might break, so they had evacuated about 16 blocks of the city in case it broke. But somehow the national news picked up this story and were alleging that if the dam broke, the entire city was going to be covered in 17
buried
feet of water in 7 minutes.
In a deluge. Yeah.
Which, for anyone who's remotely familiar with the geography of Lynchburg, the location of this lake, or just has really set foot in Lynchburg at all, would know how absurd that idea was.
Totally ridiculous.
They call it the City of Seven Hills.
There's a lot of hills here.
There's a lot of hills, and
it would take a crap ton of water.
It would take many times over 170 feet of water in order to flood the entire city.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know that news is sensationalized, and you know things just get kind of made up or reported on, like, without any knowledge of the actual situation.
But it's different. It's like a speeding ticket. It's different when it happens to you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's you know that people get pulled over for not going that fast, or they weren't like being speed demons.
Yeah.
You hear people talk about it all the time. Oh, I wasn't going that fast.
But then it happens to you.
But then it happens to you, and you're like,
what?
Oh, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
So yeah, there was flooding in the area, which was pretty. The funny part was it was actually pretty serious for the area.
Oh yeah,
like there was
by the standards of the area, and it's like the second thing we've had like that.
Yeah,
because we had that tornado.
Yeah, it was pretty bad flooding, but
nothing on the scale that.
Right. And it got picked up. Like I woke up and Googled it, and the first article that came up was from the BBC.
Right. The BBC was the point at which the tables turned, I think, because that was like the major news outlet that picked it up and spread it around. And their article was genuinely quite bad.
Yeah. Oh man.
Sorry. Not
sorry. Sorry, BBC.
So this book, Voynich Manuscript number 408, also known as the Voynich Cipher Manuscript,
also known as
the Voynitch.
Voynitch.
The Voynitch Manuscript.
Wittgenstein. Viktor Frankl. Manuscript 408. Let's go. All right, tell me about this book.
So this book, it's about 7 inches high.
Thick?
High, like tall.
Oh, right.
It's not that thick. It's like, I would guesstimate about 6 inches based on the
that's still pretty
photographic
thick
evidence that I've seen. Well, it's got calfskin pages.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty common
for
it's a medieval document.
Right.
Carbon dating indicates that it was written around the 15th century.
Okay.
And the binding is not original. It's believed to have been added later. It's also a very like cheap calfskin called limp vellum, which is sort of the medieval equivalent of putting cheap paperback binding on a book.
Okay, yeah.
So it doesn't look like.
So this was kind of calfskin book you might pick up at like an airport or something back in the 15th century.
It's a very non-impressive book outwardly. Yeah. But when you open it, it becomes a bit more mysterious. There's no... The catch about this book is there's no information about who wrote it or what it's about. It's written in a cryptic code or fictional alphabet of some sort. All of the text is not legible. And no scholars who've studied it have been able to crack the code and figure out what the book's about. It is heavily illustrated. However, the illustrations aren't particularly revealing about the nature of what the Voynich manuscript is all about. So I actually have here in the studio, I have a facsimile copy of the Voynich manuscript for us to look at. If you're following along on the radio, boys and girls at home, you can actually look at these pages online. The Yale University Press made them available some years ago, but We actually have a copy here of the Voynich Manuscript itself. It's called the Voynich Manuscript because it was purchased by a bookseller named Voynitch. And the original owner is unknown. It's gone through several different owners over the years, including Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II in Prague at the end of the 16th century. And that's kind of where the trail begins, is around that time frame. There were several different owners and people who got it from his pharmacist. The emperor's pharmacist owned it. Because it presumably has to do in some way with pharma. That's the outside of it. It has to do something to do with herbs or pharmaceuticals or health, but also space. So here's as you start, we'll kind of describe this for you as we go. You're looking at the cover of it, and it's totally nondescript medieval manuscript. And as you start to go into the book, as you flip through the pages, there's a very strange sort of text. He uses one symbol a lot that sort of looks like a straight line drawn up, and then it loops and then crosses, and then makes another loop and goes up, back down in another straight line. That seems to be recurring a lot. It looks like it could be like a combination of Latin and Arabic almost.
It's very, yeah. It's
very unusual textual.
It looks like some type of somebody's cursive script, but then with more like, yeah, Arabic stylings to it.
Right.
It has that sort of, I don't know what to call it, but
the first several pages feature a lot of that text.
And then there's illustrations as well of these sort of strange plant.
And they don't seem to correspond to any known plants.
Yeah, these are not plants that I recognize.
They're not elaborately drawn either, and they're not very artistic. They look kind of like doodles almost.
They don't seem to be like actually illustrative. They don't seem to be like instructional. Like they just kind of fill the space, and
there's text around them, but
it's not like they're diagrams of plants that are labeled, and
there's not like a line going from a text to like point to a certain piece.
They just kind of grow up and go straight through paragraphs, or the text wraps around. That's a particularly strange looking plant right there.
Yeah.
Looks like some kind of sci-fi.
There's lots of tubes in this book.
Yeah. And
things exuding from tubes. That sounds weird, but Google it. You'll see what we're talking about. So a few pages into this, it pretty much stays on the same track for a while. And then a few pages into it, it starts to shift in concept. Quite a few pages in. The plants get stranger as you go. It's somewhere after page 50.
Some of these plants are like, they look like the leaves are like bugs.
It's kind of Area X.
Legs. Yeah, it is. It does seem very Jeff Vandermeer.
Here we go.
Oh,
so
wow.
Suddenly we shift.
That's a time wheel.
In tone a bit. And then there's a chart and a graph. And there's human figures in the center of it. And then there's
text
wheels of
in
text
a circle,
around it. Then the next page is bullet points with 3 paragraphs. And then it continues. And then very unusually for the time, it actually has fold out charts, which are extremely unusual for medieval manuscripts to have fold out pages and folios like that. It's got these charts that look kind of astrological. There's pictures of the moon and the sun and stars with text labelings. What that has to do with
The plants.
the plants, no one knows. So you've got this whole elaborate
Wow.
fold out pages.
All surrounded by this text that's just completely cryptic.
I mean, it just seems like gibberish. It could be like Tolkien's Elvish or something.
Yeah. It almost, I mean, looking at it, it looks like you're right about that one symbol is occurs almost too frequently.
Yeah.
Like like it's almost in every other word, but it seems to take the role of what would seem to be like a consonant. So it would be like if you had an H, it's not like an E or anything, from the looks of it. It looks like if you would have an H in like at the beginning or in the middle of every word. Quite strange.
So as these charts continue of space and of the heavens, they begin to take on a more astrological kind of look. You have people that could represent gods or goddesses.
Oh, yeah, look at that. They're all in some kind of basket or bucket.
Yeah, bucket or a tube. There's a goat hanging out, eating a plant.
There's some fish in the center of this one.
And you think, okay, well, that might have something to do with astrology because you've got people tying in with the heavens and different types of people. Some of these people actually have clothes. Most of the people are not clothed.
More foldouts? Wow.
More foldouts. There's a lot of foldouts in it, which is really unusual.
It kind of devolves from like writing into this section of circles.
Yeah.
Circles. There's like a foldout, so there's 4 like pieces to it, and there's just like circles of text and illustrations of people and things in the center.
And the theme that kind of becomes dominant at this point in the book is naked women that are very cartoonish.
Yeah, very like crudely in 2 senses.
They're almost pregnant looking at some points.
And this is like kind of faint, almost like pencil illustrations. What it looks like. I'm sure.
Yeah, it looks very. It looks like amateur doodles in like a school notebook.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that these illustrations aren't like fantastic quality.
No, they're definitely not.
They're obviously not the work of a child, but they have that almost childlike essence to them.
On Recto 75, we begin the theme of the green tubes, and specifically women in the green tubes. So this section is thought to be about balneology, which is the science of herbal baths, healing,
interesting,
bathing, which I didn't know was a whole separate category of science unto itself. But you see people they're kind of doing something that could be conceived as showering or bathing in some sense.
Yeah, that's weird.
Not really sure. She's kind of like tossing something or receiving salt. Some of the tubes have like scales, it looks like. There's some labeling, a lot of text at this point. More green tubes. I love this one. She's got her hand in both.
Hands in the tubes, standing in another tube.
This person looks like they're being dumped on by a pepper shaker. There's this whirly gig thing. I mean, it looks like Edward Lear or Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland type stuff. I mean, it's very like fanciful.
But also like repetitive. Like he has like...
Yeah, there's definitely...
Whoever it was had like a couple concepts that they kept reiterating.
There's a theme going on here. But what it is, I can't really tell.
This is similar in funny sort of ways to our last topic.
It is, yeah.
It has almost a similar quality to it.
Because there's kind of an incoherence of finding your own meaning out of it. And you're just kind of presented with this strange thing.
And bizarre, a few bizarre ideas kind of repeated over and over in different
different ways.
variations. Here we return to some of the charts.
Some more star chart
Whoa.
material. And this facsimile is supposed to be a pretty accurate idea of what it's actually like to go through the manuscript. So, and again, all of this is available online. We'll link to it in the show notes so you can see for yourself, not just listen to us in awe over these. But yeah, by this point, you notice that the women have kind of faded out, as has the color green.
We're looking at now like a fold out
poster, basically.
Like it's kind of wheels of tubes that seem to be connecting, and scales and stars, and wow, man.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very abstracted.
I think I feel about this how you felt about the time cube page.
Then we return to more plants.
More plants, yeah.
And that kind of continues along that vein for a while. Again, they don't seem to correspond to real plants.
Yeah.
There's definitely...
This is almost a plant-animal hybrid.
Yeah, there's some of them that look like they have... The roots of the plant are almost always depicted. And they're almost always depicted as being kind of weird.
They don't look like...
You know how you get that carrot sometimes that's like, it looks like it has legs?
Yeah.
Or the carrot that doesn't quite have a shape? This is kind of, a lot of the plants in here are like that. So we'll finish flipping through it here.
Can you imagine discovering this?
It starts to take on more of a recipe book kind of vibe. There starts to be next to the plants and stuff, there starts to be bullet points, and lists and things. And a lot of people think that it's a recipe book at that point, because it seems to be listing things as if instructions, but there's no numerical. There's nothing that appears to be numerical.
Right.
About these lists. They're just they're bullet points.
Absent from the text is numbers. There aren't
these page numbers were added at a later date. They aren't original. They assume that when the book was rebound, somebody numbered it to put it back together in the right order, because how else would you know what order to go in? I mean, it seems evident that no average. And the thing that's interesting about it is that it was clearly written in a traditional medieval sense. So there was more than one person involved. There would have to be a scribe and an illustrator. It would be very rare for there to be one person who would produce a work like this by themselves. So the scholarship seems to indicate that there was a group of people involved, but to what end? Yeah. These people were writing... Yeah, so it's this very unusual thing. It bears the ex libris, which is this belongs to the library of this guy who was a pharmacist for the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II.
Right.
And it went through several different hands in the 16th century, and we have correspondence, letters between people.
Yeah.
They sent it to a translator, a Jesuit translator in Rome, saying, hey, we found this thing when we bought the library of this guy after he died. Can you translate it? So even in the 16th century,
they were trying to
100 years or more after it was written based on carbon dating.
Right.
Nobody knew what it said.
Yeah.
And could figure out what it was about. So it's been a mystery for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Wow.
It kind of emerged into modern consciousness when this book dealer Voynitch, who's a really interesting guy in and of himself, he was kind of described as roguish. He was he started out as a Russian revolutionary before the Marxist revolution.
Okay, yeah.
So he had different. He wasn't a Marxist or a communist in any way, but he was part of one of several movements to try and stage an uprising in Russia. He's from Poland, and he was actually caught and exiled to Siberia and had all these adventures trying to come back, and ended up settling in London, where he started this book business, and he acquired it in a large bulk sale of books that belonged to a bunch of Jesuits in Rome, a Jesuit sect that had the book presumably from the person who it was sent to attempt to translate it.
Right.
This guy in the 16th century who translated hieroglyphs. But to the best of our knowledge, he never actually attempted to translate it, because there's no correspondence to indicate that he did.
He did, yeah.
And presumably he died without ever looking at it. So that...
and all the modern efforts to...
Most of the modern efforts have come up bust. There are a lot of theories about it, which are interesting in a whole... I mean, you could almost do a whole podcast just about the different theories. A lot of people believe that Voynich made it up as a fraud to try and create... because he was so a roguish kind of person. A lot of people accused him of creating this forgery that's like, oh, it's made up in a made up language. And he tried to sell it for the ridiculous price of like $100,000, which was unheard of in that market and that time, that currency. But
it's one of those things where either way, it's still kind of crazy and impressive. Like if this,
even if
this was made up as a forgery, it's still an incredible book. That like the fact that somebody would go to that
the lengths
those lengths to create this kind of work. It's like
it's definitely, if it is a forgery, it's a forgery of its own era. Like it was something that somebody made up to, you know, and that's one of the theories, is that someone made it to impress the emperor and say, here, check out our our holy book of wisdom in this unknown tongue. Some people believe that it's a form of Latin, the text. Some people believe that there's actually a theory that it's Polish without vowels somehow, but that doesn't seem to correspond to me.
Do any of them have to do with consuming copious amounts of drugs?
I'm sure there's plenty of theories.
Because that's what I think of when I see this, is like it definitely seems to correspond to like specifically the illustration. I don't know of anyone drug inspired creating their own languages, although I know people taking certain kinds of drugs do report seeing different kinds of lettering and things like that. But the illustrations in particular seem like they could be like the particular weirdness of the plants and that kind of thing. But they also are definitely like very era specific. So it's not like they're completely driven by, if they were, I don't know.
There's a theory that the book was a result of a kind of speaking in tongues phenomenon. So someone was under the influence of channeling a stream of consciousness or something of that nature. And trying to express that in writing.
The interesting thing about it is, as ridiculous and illegible as the lettering is, it seems like a fairly consistent...
that's the thing about it that makes me think that it's not something like that, or drugs.
Like
there's an order to it.
There was
it's definitely ordered in sections.
Amount, like if it was drug inspired, it wasn't like somebody took a drug one time and was like, oh, I have this idea, and then just started scribbling some stuff out. It was like, even if it was drug inspired or somebody was schizophrenic or something, they still obviously like put a significant amount of effort into creating the system of language.
And there would have to be at least two people
illustrating these things. And then, as you said, multiple people. So it was someone who obviously either multiple people working together or somebody who could articulate their ideas well enough to convince the other person to help them work on it or whatever.
There's a lot of people who believe that it's a form of shorthand. There's various celebrity, if you can call them that, medieval celebrity claims of authorship or ownership. Roger Bacon is believed to be associated with it in some way. At one point, John Dee, a philosopher, was believed to have owned it at one point. A lot of scholars don't believe that either of them had anything to do with it. Again, people thought that it was a forgery to try and sell to the emperor.
Right.
Just to say, here's a thing. There's people who've created charts and graphs and ciphers and codes to try and figure out what they might correspond to, but there's so far it's come up with nothing that's definitive. Some people believe it's connected to cult or religion, possibly Asian language, like an attempt to write in an Asian language.
It doesn't seem particularly.
Some people believe that the whole book is about women's health because there's a pretty hefty section about women based on the illustrations.
The health and the whole, like, it's a health book or a book about herbs or like a recipe book. I wouldn't have picked that up looking at it. Like, I wouldn't have come up with that idea.
Right.
Maybe I don't know what those types of books would have looked like at the time.
Right.
But to me, it seems much more like somebody had some quack theory, like, was like, oh, this astrology stuff is kind of interesting, but I have a new theory that's going to blow the lid on this whole thing. It's all connected to plants and women and stars, and they decided to detail that theory in a new invented language that I guess only a few people ever knew, and then it fell out of existence.
Yeah. I mean, some people believe that it was connected to Hebrew in some way, because Hebrew is a language that doesn't always use vowels.
Right.
So maybe it's anagrams
Yeah.
or something of that nature, but obviously it's not Hebrew. So yeah, it's a mysterious thing. It's an unsolved mystery. There's been a symphony orchestra that tried to compose a symphony based on it. I think it would be interesting to make a short film or something.
Right, yeah.
Based on some of the characters that appear. It would have to be something abstract in its way.
You could do a very interesting animated film.
Yeah, sort of a Yellow Submarine kind of look. The psychedelic era. Syd Barrett kind of stuff. There's Voynitch in all his glory. But yeah, that's the Voynich Manuscript.
Wow.
If you want to check it out, look in those show notes and
see some of the
cool
definitely check
stuff
out the
that's out there. And see if you have a theory to put forth as to what it might be about, but the pigments in the pages are all period.
Wow. Amazing. All right.
So we've come to the portion of the program where we hit the magic random button on Wikipedia and see what comes up.
Oh, we don't hit the random magic button?
No, we dispense. This is season 2.
Oh.
Magic was in season 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Last season, we would hit a button that would randomly produce some sort of magic.
Right.
But this season, we're producing a button that magically produces some sort of random article on Wikipedia.
Producing a button.
It's quite amazing.
Visual image.
I hit it. I just hit it. Oh my goodness. All right. So what we got here.
Whoa.
This is interesting.
This is actually interesting, yeah.
So we got a B. The best part of this is a pretty short article, but I think the best part, the key ingredient here is the name.
Right. Definitely.
BB Healthcare.
Would you say BB or Beeb?
Beeb. B-E-E-B-E. Beeb.
B-E.
Beeb.
E-B.
Beeb. Beeb. Bib.
I feel like that last
Beeb.
E is
I think
silent.
it's Beeb. Beeb. Beeb Healthcare is a healthcare system serving Sussex County in southern Delaware in the United States. The Beebe Medical Center is its primary facility and a hospital located in Lewes.
Lewes. 155 beds, adult level 3 trauma center.
It has a birthing room, heart surgery, and cancer services.
Some of our listeners may have been born there.
24-hour emergency department.
Founded in 1916 by James Beebe and Richard Beebe.
There you go.
The Beebs.
The Beebs. Not to be confused with Jay Beebs, the singer.
The article is called Beebe Healthcare, which makes me think that it's a whole approach to healthcare.
Right, yeah, that's sort of...
But it's actually about the Beebe Medical Center more than it is the Beebe Healthcare system.
Right. I guess Beebe Healthcare is maybe the name of the overarching entity of the system that runs the center and the other medical services in the area. But it does make me wonder what Beebe Healthcare, if it were a unified theory of healthcare, would look like.
Like if the Beebs were running healthcare in the United States, what would it look like?
What would they do?
WWBD.
There's a lot of... It involves a system of soaking your feet in a series of salt baths.
Oh.
And
balneology?
Right. It's kind of like, you know how some chiropractors kind of think that they can cure everything with...
Right, yeah.
It would be kind of like someone who does like Epsom salt baths for your feet with the same idea. Right. Like they just imagine that it's going to cure your headaches, it's going to cure your, your subluxation of your spine, all that.
All that stuff's going to
everything and more. Of course, that's not actually what the Beebe Healthcare is about. That's just, I don't want to get hit with a, lawsuit because we're mischaracterizing Beebe Healthcare. I'm sure Beebe Healthcare is actually a fine healthcare institution.
I'm sure it is. This is just pointless speculation at this point. So who knows? Maybe the good people of the Beebe Healthcare system will be listening to this, and it'll change their perspective on healthcare.
And they'll come up with a new wave of healthcare.
Their thinking will be inspired.
Yeah.
They'll expand their vision. And next thing you know, Obscurigami podcast changed the world.
Well, Ben, we've done it again.
It's enough world changing for one day, I think.
We've wasted another 20-ish, 30 minutes of somebody's life with some kind
poor
of
person's commute.
Pointless, I hope you were doing something productive during this, like washing the dishes, cleaning your room, driving to work. Like, please, whatever you do, don't just listen to this podcast. Don't just sit at a table with your hands folded, like, listening to this podcast. Please mix it with something that's worth your time so that, you're at least getting something out of.
It's like a really bad vodka.
Right.
You don't want to drink it straight.
Yeah, you gotta
mix it
in there with something.
Cranberry juice or something.
And even then, if you are mixing it with another activity, there's probably some other program, audiobook, something you could be listening to. Music.
Right.
Silence. Give yourself a break from
the
nonstop deluge of entertainment media.
Yeah, take a break, do some meditation, and let us know how it goes. Send us an email, info@obscurigami.com.
Go to obscurigami.com and check out the show notes. Click on the links. Check out some of the illustrations of the book, of the Voynich Manuscript. Thank you, Ben. Very interesting topic. And
thank you, Thomas,
you're
for being
welcome.
interested.
You're welcome.